Hi everyone, have your students complained about the difficulty of learning phrasal verbs? Do you think phrasal verbs are hard to teach as well? Well, learning phrasal verbs is difficult due to the verb's flexibility in form, multiple meaning senses, appropriate use in context, and absence in some languages, such as Chinese. Research suggests a conceptual approach to tackle phrasal verbs learning. This conceptual approach is underpinned by cognitive linguistic theory that suggests humans use language as a tool to describe their various physical experiences in the world. Spatial orientation, such as up and down, is the essential experience derived from the human senses. People use orientational particles like up and down to help them visualize the surrounding space. They also extend the interpretation of these particles to convey the metaphorical meaning generated from the concept of direction. For example, the particle up entails the directional meaning of being upward, and the orientational metaphors of increasing, growing, and improving. This may inspire you to teach phrasal verbs by taking them as decomposable constructions in which the metaphorical senses of the particles contribute to the idiomatic meaning of the phrasal verbs as a whole. You can help your students reduce the confusion over the idiomaticity of phrasal verbs by guiding them to access the regularity in the meaning of these particles. For instance, up implies completion of making things more visible or accessible, as in drink up and bring up. To help you have a comprehensive understanding of how conceptual metaphors work for teaching phrasal verbs, this video introduces a sample lesson plan for teaching 10 English phrasal verbs in a 90-minute class. These phrasal verbs follow the verb plus out construction. The instructional procedure of the lesson plan is comprised of 6 stages, including ruling out confusion, breaking through idiomaticity, summing up metaphorical meaning, checking our understanding, stirring up creativity, and homework. To prepare for this lesson, you will need a worksheet of sample sentences for the 10 phrasal verbs, a worksheet for students to sketch drawings to express the meaning of 5 selected phrasal verbs, a tree diagram worksheet, a phrasal verb practice worksheet, and dictionary. The first stage is ruling out confusion. First, you need to introduce the construction of English phrasal verbs to your students and draw their attention to the target phrasal verbs. This can be done by showing them 5 sentences containing the verb plus out combinations, and asking them to figure out the similarities between these sentences. Next, you can introduce the meaning of the phrasal verbs by referring to both the sentences and the dictionary definitions. The second stage is breaking through idiomaticity. In this lesson, you need to extend students' knowledge of the particle out by showing them another 5 sentences that use verb plus out combinations in which the metaphorical meaning of out here differs from that of the previous 5 sentences. Students will need to draw a sketch to express the meaning of the 5 new phrasal verbs. After that, they need to share their work and interpret how the meaning of out is illustrated in the sketches. You will then explain the metaphorical meaning of these 5 phrasal verbs in their L1 translations. The third stage is summing up metaphorical meaning. You may ask your students to work individually to create a tree diagram by grouping the 10 phrasal verbs you provided under the headings of their conceptual metaphors. You can check their understanding by asking them to explain their categorizations. The fourth stage is checking our understanding. You can have each student to complete a sentence completion task that requires the use of appropriate phrasal verbs. While they are working on their exercises, you may walk around the class and offer help to those having difficulty. The fifth stage is stirring up creativity. By having students work in groups, to come up with 5 more examples of the verb plus out construction, you extend their knowledge about verb plus out combinations. You can also ask them to ponder whether any additional meaning groups should be added to the tree diagram. For homework, you can assign your students to work in groups to create between 4 and 6 phrasal verbs by using each of the following particles: up, off, out, into, through, and down. Their assignments should include self-made tree diagram along with L1 translations and chosen pictures to express the phrasal verbs they created. You can share their work with the class during the next lesson. In this lesson, you can hold a short discussion to summarize the knowledge students learned about the phrasal verbs by asking the following questions. What is a typical form of English phrasal verbs? What is or are the possible meaning senses of the particle out in a phrasal verb? Can you propose some particles that have similar metaphorical meaning as out? This conceptual teaching approach allows you to include a range of learning activities that can be realized with visualizations to construct interesting and learner-centered classroom activities. Check out this paper if you would like to know more about the effectiveness of this approach.